Welcome to the Inspiring Illustrations channel. The story of Daniel. Who was Daniel in the Bible? Daniel was one of the most prominent prophets of the Old Testament. He is recognized for his remarkable wisdom, extraordinary courage, and unwavering faith. His story takes place during the turbulent period of the Babylonian captivity, around the 6th century before Christ. As a young man, Daniel was deported to Babylon along with other nobles of Judah. In this foreign and often hostile environment, he quickly stood out for his extraordinary intelligence and deep devotion to God. The book that bears his name narrates his experiences and visions during this period of exile, offering a fascinating glimpse into the life of a man of faith amidst challenging circumstances. In this video, we will dive into the fascinating story of Daniel, exploring everything the Bible reveals about this extraordinary prophet of God. We will examine his journey from beginning to end, uncovering the challenges he faced and the lessons we can learn from his life. Before we proceed, I'd like to extend a special invitation to our new viewers. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and activate notifications so you won't miss any of our Bible studies. The name Daniel in Hebrew means God is my judge or God is judge. This meaning is deeply relevant, reflecting key themes in the biblical narrative of Daniel's life and in the book that bears his name. A verse that captures the essence of these themes is Daniel, chapter 2, verse 21, which says, "He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding." This verse highlights God's sovereignty over history and human kingdoms, a central theme in the book of Daniel. Now, let's dive deeply into the story of Daniel, beginning with the first chapter. Daniel, chapter 1, the young Israelites in Nebuchadnezzar's court. In the 3rd year of King Jehoiakim's reign in Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, attacked Jerusalem and surrounded the city with his soldiers. God allowed Nebuchadnezzar to conquer the city and take some valuable objects from the temple. Nebuchadnezzar transported these items to Babylon and placed them in the temple of his god, in the treasury. King Nebuchadnezzar ordered Ashpenaz, chief of the palace officials, to select some young Israelites from the royal family and noble families among the prisoners. The chosen youths were to be healthy, without physical defects, good-looking, intelligent, and well-educated, capable of serving in the palace. They needed to learn the language and writings of the Babylonians. The king ordered that these young men be given the same food and wine that he consumed daily. After 3 years of training, they would be ready to serve in the palace. Among the chosen were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, all from the tribe of Judah.
Ashpenaz gave them new names: Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
Daniel resolved not to defile himself with the king's food and wine, so he asked Ashpenaz to help him keep this decision. God caused Ashpenaz to be kind and favorable to Daniel. However, Ashpenaz feared the king and said to Daniel, "It was the king who determined what you should eat and drink. If he notices that you are less healthy than the other young men, he might kill me, and it would be your fault." Then Daniel spoke with the guard whom Ashpenaz had appointed to look after him, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Daniel said to the guard, "Please test us for 10 days, give us only vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then compare our appearance with that of the young men who eat the king's food. Depending on the result, treat us according to what you see fit." The guard agreed and tested them for 10 days. After 10 days, the 4 young Israelites appeared healthier and better nourished than those who ate the king's food. So the guard removed their assigned food and wine and gave them only vegetables. God granted the 4 young men profound knowledge of the Babylonian writings and sciences, and to Daniel, he also gave the ability to interpret visions and dreams. At the end of the 3 years of training established by King Nebuchadnezzar, Ashpenaz presented all the young men to the king. Among them, none compared to Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, so they began serving in the palace. Whenever the king consulted them on matters requiring wisdom and knowledge, he found them 10 times wiser than all the magicians and enchanters in Babylon. Daniel remained in the royal palace until the beginning of Cyrus's reign over Babylon. Daniel, chapter 2, Nebuchadnezzar's dream. In the 2nd year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign in Babylon, he had dreams that left him so unsettled that he couldn't sleep. So he summoned the wise men, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers to interpret the dreams. When they arrived and stood before the king, he said, "I had a dream that troubled me deeply, and I won't rest until I know what it means." They answered the king in Aramaic, "May the king live forever. Tell us the dream, and we will explain what it means." But the king replied, "I have decided that you must tell me the dream and also explain its meaning. If you can't, you will all be cut into pieces, and your houses will be destroyed. But if you tell me the dream and explain its meaning, I will give you gifts, rewards, and great honor. So, tell me what I dreamed and what the dream means." The wise men responded again, "Tell us the dream, and we will explain what it means." The king insisted, "I know what you are trying to do. You're trying to buy time because you know I've made up my mind. If you don't tell me the dream, you will all receive the same punishment. You have conspired to deceive me with lies, hoping that the situation will change. Tell me the dream, and then I'll know that you can explain its meaning." The wise men answered the king, "There is no one on earth who can do what you ask. No king, no matter how great, has ever demanded such a thing from any wise man, enchanter, or astrologer. What you are asking is impossible. There is no one who can fulfill your request, except the gods, and they do not live among us on earth." The king was so furious that he ordered the execution of all the wise men in Babylon. The decree was issued, and they came to seek Daniel and his companions to put them to death as well. God revealed to Daniel the meaning of the dream. Daniel went to Arioch, the commander of the king's guard, who was tasked with executing all the wise men of Babylon. With wisdom and tact, Daniel asked Arioch, "Why did the king issue such a harsh decree?" Arioch explained the situation. So Daniel went in to speak with the king, who agreed to give him time to interpret the dream. Daniel returned home and shared everything with his friends Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. He asked them to pray to the God of heaven, pleading for mercy and for the revelation of the mysterious dream, so they would not be condemned along with the other wise men of Babylon. That night, Daniel had a vision in which God revealed the meaning of the dream. Then, Daniel praised God. Daniel said, "May the name of God be praised forever and ever, for wisdom and power belong to him. He changes times and seasons, he sets up kings and deposes them, he gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to the discerning. He reveals deep and hidden things, he knows what lies in darkness, and light dwells with him. O God of my ancestors, I thank and praise you, for you have given me wisdom and power. You have answered our prayer, revealing what the king wanted to know." Daniel reveals the meaning of the dream to the king. Daniel went to Arioch, the official in charge of executing the wise men of Babylon, and said, "Arioch, do not kill the wise men. Take me to the king, and I will explain the dream he had." Arioch quickly brought Daniel to the king and said, "I have found one of the exiles from Judah who can explain the dream you had." The king asked Daniel, also known as Belteshazzar, "Can you tell me what I dreamed and what it means?" Daniel replied, "No wise man, enchanter, sorcerer, or astrologer can explain the mystery the king has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. He has shown King Nebuchadnezzar what will happen in the days to come. Now, O king, I will explain the dream and the visions that passed through your mind while you were lying in bed. As you were lying there, O king, your thoughts turned to what would happen in the future, and the revealer of mysteries showed you what is going to happen. As for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because I have greater wisdom than anyone else alive, but so that you, O king, may understand the meaning of your dream and the thoughts that crossed your mind. You had a vision of a colossal statue standing before you. The statue was bright and terrifying. Its head was made of pure gold, its chest and arms were silver, its belly and thighs were bronze, its legs were iron, and its feet were partly iron and partly clay. As you watched, a stone was cut out of a mountain without human hands and struck the statue's feet, shattering them. Immediately, the iron, clay, bronze, silver, and gold turned to dust, like chaff on a threshing floor in summer. The wind carried them away without leaving a trace. But the stone grew and became a great mountain, filling the entire world. This was the dream, and now I will explain it to you. O king, you are the most powerful of all kings, and it is the God of heaven who has given you power, authority, and honor. He has given you dominion over all the earth, including human beings, animals, and birds. You are the head of gold. After your kingdom, another will arise, less powerful, and after that, a third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over the entire world. Then a fourth kingdom will come, strong as iron, breaking and shattering everything. Just as iron crushes everything, this kingdom will destroy all the others. In the statue you saw, the feet and toes were partly iron and partly clay. This means that the kingdom will be divided, but it will still have some of the strength of iron, as you observed. The toes, being half iron and half clay, indicate that the kingdom will be strong in some aspects but weak in others. You, O king, saw the iron mixed with clay, signifying that the kings will attempt to unite their kingdoms through alliances, but just as iron and clay do not mix, these kingdoms will not hold together. During the reign of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed or conquered by another. This kingdom will crush all the others and will last forever. This is what the stone you saw cut out of the mountain without human hands represents, which smashed the statue of iron, bronze, silver, clay, and gold. The great God is revealing to you what will happen in the future. This was the dream you had, and this is the correct interpretation. Daniel is rewarded. King Nebuchadnezzar bowed before Daniel, touching his face to the ground, and ordered that sacrifices and incense be offered to Daniel. He said to Daniel, "The God you worship is truly the most powerful of all gods and the Lord of all kings. I know it is He who reveals mysteries because you have explained this enigmatic dream to me." The king then elevated Daniel to a position of high authority in the kingdom and gave him many valuable gifts. He appointed Daniel as governor of the province of Babylon and made him chief of all the wise men in the land. At Daniel's request, the king appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego as administrators of the province of Babylon, while Daniel remained at the royal court. Daniel, chapter 3. The Golden Statue. King Nebuchadnezzar ordered the construction of a statue 90 feet high and 9 feet wide, and commanded that it be placed on the plain of Dura, in the province of Babylon. He then summoned all the regional governors, prefects, provincial governors, judges, treasurers, magistrates, counselors, and other authorities for the statue's dedication ceremony. Everyone gathered and stood before the statue for the ceremony. Then, the herald loudly proclaimed, "Peoples of all nations, races, and languages. When you hear the sound of the trumpets, flutes, zither, lyres, harps, and other musical instruments, you must all bow down and worship the golden statue that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not bow down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." So when the musical instruments began to play, everyone present bowed down and worshipped the golden statue. The faithfulness of Daniel's friends. At that time, some astrologers took the opportunity to accuse the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "May the king live forever. You have issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the musical instruments must bow down and worship the golden statue. Whoever disobeys will be thrown into a blazing furnace. Some Jews whom you have appointed as administrators over the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, pay no attention to you, O king. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden statue you have set up." Upon hearing this, Nebuchadnezzar became furious and ordered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to be brought before him. They were brought to the king, who said to them, "Is it true that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden statue I have set up? Very well then. Are you ready to bow down and worship the statue when the musical instruments play? If not, you will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. And who is the God who can save you?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied, "O king, we do not need to defend ourselves. If the God we worship wills it, he can save us from the furnace and deliver us from your power. But even if he does not, know that we will not worship your gods or the golden statue you have set up." The three young men in the fiery furnace. Upon hearing this, Nebuchadnezzar was enraged with the three young men, and in his fury, he ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. He then commanded his strongest soldiers to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the furnace. The three young men, fully clothed in their robes, trousers, turbans, and other garments, were bound and thrown into the furnace. The king's command was so urgent, and the furnace so hot, that the flames killed the soldiers who threw the three men inside. Bound, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego fell into the blazing furnace. Suddenly, Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, "Weren't 3 men that we tied up and threw into the furnace?" "Certainly, O king," they replied. "Then why do I see 4 men walking around freely in the fire? They are unharmed, and the 4th looks like an angel." The king approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here." The 3 emerged from the furnace, and all the authorities gathered around them and saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies. The flames had not burned a single hair on their heads, their clothes were untouched, and they did not even smell of smoke. The king exclaimed, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel and saved his servants who trusted in him. They defied my command and chose to face death rather than bow down and worship a God that was not their own. Therefore I decree that any person, regardless of their race, nation, or language, who speaks against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, shall be cut into pieces, and their houses destroyed. For there is no other God who can save in this way." Then King Nebuchadnezzar promoted the 3 young men to even higher positions in the province of Babylon. Daniel, chapter 4. Nebuchadnezzar had another dream. King Nebuchadnezzar sent a message to the peoples of every nation, race, and language. "Peace and prosperity to you. I want you all to know about the miraculous signs and wonders the Most High God has performed for me. His wonders are great, and his miracles are mighty. His kingdom is eternal, and his reign will last forever." He continued, "I, Nebuchadnezzar, was living comfortably in my palace, and everything was going well. But one night, I had a dream that greatly troubled me. As I lay asleep, terrifying thoughts and visions took hold of me. So I summoned all the wise men of Babylon to interpret the dream. The magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners came, but none of them could explain the dream. Finally Daniel, also known as Belteshazzar, named after my God, came before me. The spirit of the holy gods is in him, so I told him the dream. I said to him, Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you and that no mystery is too difficult for you. Here is my dream. Tell me what it means. As I lay on my bed, I saw a vision of a huge tree in the center of the earth. The tree grew so tall that it reached the sky and could be seen from anywhere in the world. Its leaves were beautiful, and it produced so much fruit that everyone could eat from it. Wild animals rested in its shade, birds nested in its branches, and all living creatures were fed by it. While I was dreaming, I saw a messenger, a holy one, coming down from heaven. He called out in a loud voice, "Cut down the tree and trim off its branches, strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the animals flee from under it and the birds from its branches. But let the stump and its roots, bound with iron and bronze, remain in the ground, in the grass of the field. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him live with the animals among the plants of the earth. Let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let him be given the mind of an animal until 7 years pass by. This decision is announced by messengers, so that the living may know that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth, and gives them to anyone he wishes, and sets over them the lowliest of people." Nebuchadnezzar concluded by saying, "This is the dream that I had. Now, Belteshazzar, tell me what it means, for none of the wise men of my kingdom can interpret it for me. But you can, because the spirit of the holy gods is in you." Daniel interprets the dream. Upon hearing this, Daniel, also called Belteshazzar, was greatly perplexed for a while, and his thoughts terrified him. So the king said, "Belteshazzar, do not let the dream or its meaning alarm you." Daniel answered, "My lord, if only the dream applied to your enemies and its meaning to your adversaries. The tree you saw, which grew large and strong, with its top touching the sky, visible to the whole earth, with beautiful leaves and abundant fruit, providing food for all, giving shelter to the wild animals, and having nesting places in its branches for the birds. Your Majesty, you are that tree. You have become great and strong, your greatness has grown until it reaches the sky, and your dominion extends to distant parts of the earth. Your Majesty saw a holy one, a messenger, coming down from heaven and saying, 'Cut down the tree and destroy it, but leave the stump, bound with iron and bronze, in the grass of the field, while its roots remain in the ground. Let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, let him live with the animals, until 7 years pass by.' This is the interpretation, Your Majesty, and this is the decree the Most High has issued against my lord the king. You will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox and be drenched with the dew of heaven. 7 years will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes. The command to leave the stump of the tree with its roots means that your kingdom will be restored to you when you acknowledge that heaven rules. Therefore, Your Majesty, please accept my advice, renounce your sins by doing what is right, and your wickedness by being kind to the oppressed. It may be that then your prosperity will continue." All this happened to King Nebuchadnezzar. 12 months later, as the king was walking on the roof of the royal palace of Babylon, he said, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence, by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" Even as the words were on his lips, a voice came from heaven. "This is what is decreed for you, King Nebuchadnezzar. Your royal authority has been taken from you. You will be driven away from people and will live with the wild animals. You will eat grass like the ox. 7 years will pass by for you until you acknowledge that the Most High is sovereign over all kingdoms on earth and gives them to anyone he wishes." Immediately what had been said about Nebuchadnezzar was fulfilled. He was driven away from people and ate grass like the ox. His body was drenched with the dew of heaven until his hair grew like the feathers of an eagle and his nails like the claws of a bird. Nebuchadnezzar praises the Most High. The king declared, "At the end of that time I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes toward heaven, and my sanity was restored. Then I praised the Most High, I honored and glorified him who lives forever. His dominion is an eternal dominion, his kingdom endures from generation to generation. All the peoples of the earth are regarded as nothing. He does as he pleases with the powers of heaven and the peoples of the earth. No one can hold back his hand or say to him, "What have you done?" At the same time that my sanity was restored, my honor and splendor were returned to me for the glory of my kingdom. My advisors and nobles sought me out, and I was restored to my throne and became even greater than before. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and exalt and glorify the King of heaven because everything he does is right, and all his ways are just. And those who walk in pride, he is able to humble. Daniel, chapter 5. The banquet of King Belshazzar. One night, King Belshazzar of Babylon gave a great banquet for 1,000 of his nobles and drank wine with them. While Belshazzar was drinking his wine, he gave orders to bring in the gold and silver goblets that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken from the temple in Jerusalem. He wanted to drink from them with his nobles, his wives, and his concubines. So they brought in the gold goblets that had been taken from the temple of God in Jerusalem, and the king and his nobles, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. As they drank the wine, they praised the gods of gold and silver, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Suddenly, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall, near the lampstand in the royal palace. The king watched the hand as it wrote. His face turned pale, and he was so frightened that his legs became weak and his knees were knocking. The king called out for the enchanters, astrologers, and diviners to be brought, and said to these wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and tells me what it means will be clothed in purple and have a gold chain placed around his neck, and he will be made the third highest ruler in the kingdom." Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or tell the king what it meant. So King Belshazzar became even more terrified, and his face grew more pale. His nobles were baffled. The queen, hearing the voices of the king and his nobles, came into the banquet hall. "May the king live forever," she said. "Don't be alarmed. Don't look so pale. There is a man in your kingdom who has the spirit of the holy gods in him. In the time of your father, he was found to have insight and intelligence and wisdom like that of the gods. Your father, King Nebuchadnezzar, appointed him chief of the magicians, enchanters, astrologers, and diviners. He did this because Daniel, whom the king called Belteshazzar, was found to have a keen mind and knowledge and understanding, and also the ability to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve difficult problems. Call for Daniel, and he will tell you what the writing means." Daniel interprets the mysterious words. They brought Daniel before the king, who asked, "Are you Daniel, one of the Jews my father, King Nebuchadnezzar, brought from Judah as a prisoner? I've heard that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that you possess great clarity, intelligence, and wisdom. Recently, I called the wise men and astrologers to read the words on the wall and explain their meaning, but they couldn't. Someone told me that you can unravel mysteries and solve difficult problems. If you can read what is written and explain its meaning, you'll be clothed in purple, receive a gold chain around your neck, and become the third most important ruler in my kingdom. You may keep your gifts or give them to someone else. Even so, I will read the words on the wall and explain their meaning. O king, the Most High God gave the kingdom to your father, Nebuchadnezzar, along with power, glory, and majesty. The power God gave him was so great that all the peoples of the world trembled with fear before him. If he wanted, he would kill a person. If he wanted, he would let them live. He would elevate some and bring others down. But he became arrogant, stubborn, and full of himself, and was overthrown from power, losing all his glory. He was expelled from among humans, lost his sanity, and acted like an animal. He lived with wild donkeys, ate grass like oxen, and slept outdoors, wet with the dew. This lasted until he acknowledged that the Most High God rules over all the kingdoms of the world and places whoever he wants as king. And you, O King Belshazzar, son of Nebuchadnezzar, knew all this, but you were not humble. Instead, you defied the King of Heaven and brought the cups from the temple so that you, your guests, your wives, and concubines could drink wine from them. Moreover, you praised gods of silver, gold, bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which cannot see, hear, or understand anything. But you did not glorify God, who has power over life and death and decides everything that happens to you. Therefore he sent this hand to write on the wall the words, Mene, Mene, Tekel, and Parsin. Now, the explanation. Mene means that God has numbered the days of your reign and decided to end it. Tekel means you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. Perez means your kingdom will be divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Then King Belshazzar ordered Daniel to be clothed in purple, a gold chain placed around his neck, and announced that he would be the third most important ruler in the kingdom of Babylon. That same night, Belshazzar, king of Babylon, was killed, and Darius the Mede, 62 years old, began to reign in his place. Daniel, chapter 6. Daniel in the lion's den. King Darius decided to divide the country into 120 provinces, appointing 120 men to govern them. To ensure efficient administration and no losses, the king chose 3 ministers to oversee these governors. One of these ministers was Daniel, who soon stood out for his competence. He was so capable that the king considered making him the highest authority in the kingdom. The other ministers and governors tried to find a reason to accuse Daniel of mismanagement, but they couldn't. Daniel was honest and upright, and no one could accuse him of any wrongdoing. Then they said among themselves, "We will never find a reason to accuse Daniel unless it is something related to his religion." They went together to speak with the king and said, "May King Darius live forever. All of us who hold positions of authority in the kingdom, including ministers, governors, mayors, and other authorities, agree to ask you to issue an irrevocable order. Order that for 30 days, everyone must make their requests only to you. If anyone makes a request to any god or any other man during this period, they will be thrown into the lion's den. Therefore, O king, issue the order and sign it, so that it cannot be revoked. According to the law of the Medes and the Persians, this order will be irrevocable." The king agreed, signed the order, and published it. When Daniel learned that the order had been signed, he went home. Upstairs, there was a room with windows facing Jerusalem. Daniel opened the windows, knelt, and prayed, giving thanks to his God. He did this 3 times a day. Daniel's enemies went together to his house and found him praying to his God. Then, they went to the king to talk about the decree. They said, "O king, you signed a decree that forbids for 30 days any request to any god or man except you. And whoever disobeys will be thrown into the lion's den. Is this not true?" The king replied, "It is true, and the decree must be enforced. According to the law of the Medes and the Persians, it cannot be revoked." Then they said to the king, "But Daniel, one of the exiles from Judah, does not respect you or the decree, for he prays to his God 3 times a day." Upon hearing this, the king was greatly distressed and decided to save Daniel. Until sunset, he did everything he could to free him. Daniel's adversaries went again to the king and said, "You know that according to the law of the Medes and the Persians, no order or decree signed by the king can be revoked." So the king ordered that Daniel be brought and thrown into the lion's den. And the king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve so faithfully, deliver you." They brought a stone and sealed the entrance of the den. The king sealed the stone with his ring and the rings of the authorities to ensure that the law was carried out. The king returned to the palace, but did not eat or entertain himself as usual. That night, he could not sleep. At dawn, he got up and hurried to the lion's den. With a troubled voice, he called out, "Daniel, servant of the living God. Has your God, whom you serve so faithfully, been able to save you from the lions?" Daniel answered, "May the king live forever. My God sent his angel, who shut the lions' mouths so they would not hurt me, because he knows I am innocent before him and have committed no crime against you." The king, overjoyed, ordered Daniel to be lifted out of the den. When he was taken out, they saw that he had not been harmed because he trusted in God. Then the king ordered that the men who had accused Daniel, along with their families, be brought and thrown into the lion's den. Before they reached the bottom, the lions attacked and tore them apart. Then King Darius wrote a letter to all the peoples, nations, and languages of the world, saying, "Peace and prosperity to you all. I decree that everyone in my kingdom must respect and honor the God of Daniel, for he is the living God who endures forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his dominion will never end. He rescues and saves, he performs signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. It was he who delivered Daniel from the power of the lions." Daniel remained in a high position in the government during the reign of Darius and also during the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Daniel, chapter 7. The vision of the four monstrous creatures. In the first year of King Belshazzar's reign in Babylon, Daniel had a dream while lying in his bed. When he woke up, he wrote down what he had seen. In the dream, Daniel saw the winds blowing from all directions, stirring up the waters of a vast sea. Suddenly, four great creatures emerged from the sea, each different from the other. The first looked like a lion with eagle's wings. As Daniel watched, the wings were torn off, and the creature was lifted up to stand on 2 feet like a man, and it was given a human mind. The second creature was like a bear. It rose up on its hind legs, holding 3 ribs in its mouth, and a voice told it to devour much flesh. After that, I saw a third creature, like a leopard. It had 4 heads and 4 wings on its back, like those of a bird. Authority was given to this creature to rule. The fourth creature I saw in the vision was terrifying, dreadful, and exceedingly strong. It had large iron teeth, with which it crushed and devoured its victims. What remained, it trampled underfoot. This creature was different from the other 3 and had 10 horns. As I was observing the horns, I noticed a smaller horn coming up among them. 3 of the horns were uprooted to make room for this smaller horn, which had eyes like those of a human and a mouth that spoke arrogantly. The revelation of God. As I continued to watch, I saw several thrones set in place. One who has always existed took his seat. His clothing was as white as snow, and the hair on his head was like wool. His throne and its wheels were ablaze with fire, and a river of fire flowed from before him. Thousands attended him, and millions stood in his presence. The court was seated, and the books were opened. I kept watching because the small horn continued to speak arrogantly. I saw the fourth beast killed, its body was destroyed and thrown into the fire. The other beasts had their power stripped away, but their lives were prolonged for a time. In the same night vision, I saw someone like a son of man coming with the clouds of heaven. He approached the one who has always existed and was led into his presence. He was given power, glory, and royal authority so that all peoples, nations, and languages would serve him. His dominion is everlasting, and his kingdom will never end. The interpretation of the visions. The visions troubled me greatly, and I was deeply disturbed by what I had seen. I approached one of those standing nearby and asked for an explanation. He said, "The 4 great beasts are 4 kings who will rise from the earth. But the kingdom will be given to the people of the Most High God, and they will rule forever." I also wanted to know more about the 4th beast, which was different from the other 3, terrifying, with iron teeth and bronze claws, that crushed and devoured its victims and trampled whatever was left. I asked about the 10 horns on the beast's head and the other horn that grew up and caused 3 of the horns to fall, the horn that seemed stronger and had eyes and a mouth that spoke arrogantly. As I watched, this horn waged war against the holy people and was defeating them until the Ancient of Days came. He pronounced judgment in favor of the holy people of the Most High, and the time came when they possessed the kingdom. Here is the explanation I received. The 4th beast is a king whose kingdom will be different from all the others. He will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. The 10 horns are 10 kings who will come from this kingdom. After them, another king will arise, different from the earlier ones. He will subdue 3 kings. He will speak against the Most High and oppress his holy people, trying to change the set times and the laws. The holy people will be delivered into his hands for 3.5 years. But the court will sit, and his power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever. Then the sovereignty, power, and greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the holy people of the Most High. His kingdom will be an everlasting kingdom, and all rulers will worship and obey him. Here ends the account. I, Daniel, was deeply troubled by my thoughts, and my face turned pale, but I kept the matter to myself. Daniel, chapter 8. The revelation of the ram and the goat. In the 3rd year of King Belshazzar's reign, I had another vision. In my vision, I seemed to be standing beside the Ulai Canal in Susa, a fortified city in the province of Elam. Suddenly, I saw a ram with 2 long horns standing beside the canal. One of the horns was longer than the other, even though it had grown later. The ram charged westward, northward, and southward. No animal could stand against it, and none could rescue from its power. It did as it pleased and became great. As I was thinking about this, I saw a goat coming from the west, crossing the whole earth without touching the ground. This goat had a large, prominent horn between its eyes. It came toward the ram I had seen standing beside the canal and charged at it with great rage. I saw it attack the ram furiously, striking the ram and shattering its 2 horns. The ram was powerless to stand against it. The goat knocked it to the ground and trampled on it, and no one could rescue the ram from its power. The goat became even more powerful, but at the height of its power, its large horn was broken off, and in its place, 4 prominent horns grew up toward the 4 winds of heaven. Out of one of them came another horn, which started small but grew in power toward the south, the east, and toward the beautiful land. It grew until it reached the host of the heavens, and it threw some of the starry host down to the earth and trampled on them. It set itself up to be as great as the commander of the army of the Lord. It took away the daily sacrifice from the Lord, and his sanctuary was thrown down. Because of rebellion, the Lord's people and the daily sacrifice were given over to it. It prospered in everything it did, and truth was thrown to the ground. Then I heard a Holy One speaking, and another Holy One said to him, "How long will it take for the vision to be fulfilled? The vision concerning the daily sacrifice, the rebellion that causes desolation, the surrender of the sanctuary, and the trampling underfoot of the Lord's people?" He said to me, "It will take 2,300 evenings and mornings. Then the sanctuary will be reconsecrated." Gabriel explains the vision. While I, Daniel, was watching the vision and trying to understand it, there before me stood one who looked like a man. And I heard a man's voice from the Ulai calling, "Gabriel, tell this man the meaning of the vision." As he came near the place where I was standing, I was terrified and fell prostrate. "Son of man," he said to me, "understand that the vision concerns the time of the end." While he was speaking to me, I was in a deep sleep, with my face to the ground. Then he touched me and raised me to my feet. He said, "I am going to tell you what will happen later in the time of wrath, because the vision concerns the appointed time of the end. The two-horned ram that you saw represents the kings of Media and Persia. The shaggy goat is the king of Greece, and the large horn between its eyes is the first king. The 4 horns that replace the one that was broken represent 4 kingdoms that will emerge from his nation, but will not have the same power. In the latter part of their reign, when rebels have become completely wicked, a fierce-looking king, a master of intrigue, will arise. He will become very strong, but not by his own power. He will cause astounding devastation and will succeed in whatever he does. He will destroy those who are mighty, the holy people. He will cause deceit to prosper, and he will consider himself superior. When they feel secure, he will destroy many and take his stand against the Prince of Princes. Yet he will be destroyed, but not by human power. The vision of the evenings and mornings that has been given to you is true, but seal up the vision, for it concerns the distant future. I, Daniel, was worn out. I lay exhausted for several days. Then I got up and went about the king's business. I was appalled by the vision, it was beyond understanding. Daniel, chapter 9. Daniel prays for his people. Darius, son of Xerxes, of Median descent, was the king of Babylon. In the first year of his reign, I was studying the sacred books and reflecting on the 70 years of Jerusalem's desolation, as the Lord God had spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. In a sign of mourning, I dressed in coarse cloth, sat in ashes, fasted, and fervently prayed to the Lord God, making requests and supplications. I prayed to the Lord my God, and made the following confession. Lord God, you are great and powerful. You keep the covenant with those who love you and obey your commandments, always showing your love. We have sinned and committed wickedness. We have done wrong and rebelled against you. We have disobeyed your laws and commandments. We did not listen to your servants, the prophets, who spoke in your name to our kings, leaders, ancestors, and all the people of Israel. You, Lord, are always just, but now we are ashamed, we your people, both those living in Judah and in Jerusalem, as well as those scattered in nearby and distant lands. This has happened because we rebelled against you. Our kings, leaders, and ancestors, all of us have sinned against you, Lord, and for that reason we are ashamed. But you are merciful and ready to forgive us, even when we have rebelled against you. We disobeyed your command, Lord our God, and did not follow the laws you gave us through your servants, the prophets. All the people of Israel disobeyed your commandments and did not follow your orders. We sinned against you, and so the curses and calamities written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, have come upon us. You fulfilled the warnings given to us and our leaders, punishing us severely. There has never been a disaster as great as the one that has fallen on Jerusalem, as it is written in the law of Moses. Even so, we did not turn away from our sins, nor did we strive to follow your truth. We did nothing to please the Lord our God. Therefore you, Lord, prepared this punishment and brought it upon us. You are the Lord our God, just in all you do, and we did not heed your commands. O Lord our God, you showed your great power by bringing your people out of Egypt, and the fame of that deed remains to this day. But we have sinned and done wrong. O Lord, you are merciful, therefore do not remain angry with Jerusalem, your city, and your holy mountain. Because of our sins and the sins of our ancestors, the neighboring peoples mock Jerusalem and your people. O our God, hear my prayer and answer the supplication of your servant. So that all may know that you, Lord, are God, pour out your blessings on your temple, which now lies desolate. Hear, O my God, and answer my prayer. Open your eyes, see our misery, and look upon your city. We make our requests because of your great compassion and not because we are good and honest. Hear, O Lord. Forgive us, Lord. Answer us, Lord, and come to our aid. So that all may know that you are God, do not delay in helping us, O my God, for we are your people, and Jerusalem is your city. Gabriel explains the prophecy. I continued to pray, confessing my sins and those of my people, and making supplications to the Lord my God on behalf of his holy mountain. While I was still praying, Gabriel, the same angel I had seen in the vision, came swiftly and stood near me. It was the time of the evening sacrifice, around 3 o'clock. He said, "Daniel, I have come to explain the meaning of the vision. As soon as you began to pray, God heard your request. He loves you very much and has sent me to clarify the vision. Therefore, pay attention and seek to understand what I am going to say. Daniel, the punishment of your people and your holy city will last 70 weeks of years, until the rebellion ends and sin is eliminated. Then, your people will receive forgiveness of sins, and God's eternal righteousness will be established. The vision and prophecy will be fulfilled, and the holy temple will be restored. Pay attention and understand. After the order to rebuild Jerusalem, 7 weeks of years will pass until the arrival of the leader chosen by God. The new streets and walls of Jerusalem will last for 62 weeks of years, but it will be a time of great suffering. At the end of this period, the leader chosen by God will be unjustly killed. A king will come with his army and destroy the city and the temple. The end will come like a flood, bringing war and destruction as determined by God. This king will make a covenant with many peoples for 7 years, but in the middle of that time, he will stop the sacrifices of animals and the grain offerings in the temple. The great terror will be placed in the highest place of the temple and will remain there until the one who placed it is destroyed, according to the will of God. Daniel, chapter 10. Daniel's vision by the Tigris River. In the 3rd year of Cyrus' reign, king of Persia, I, Daniel, also known as Belteshazzar, received a message from God. The message was true, but difficult to understand. The explanation came through a vision. At that time, I mourned for 3 weeks. During this period, I did not eat tasty food or meat, I did not drink wine, and I did not care for my hair. On the 24th day of the 1st month, I was by the great Tigris River, when suddenly I saw an angel dressed in linen clothes and wearing a belt of pure gold. His body shone like precious stones, his face was like lightning, his eyes were like blazing torches, his arms and legs gleamed like polished bronze, and his voice resounded like the sound of a multitude. I was the only one who saw this vision. My companions saw nothing, but they were terrified, and fled and hid. I was left alone, seeing this awe-inspiring vision. I turned pale with fear and lost all strength. When I heard the angel speak, I fainted and fell face down on the ground. Then the hand of someone touched me, and I was raised to my knees, supported on the palms of my hands. The angel said to me, "Daniel, God loves you very much and has sent me to speak with you. Stand up and pay attention to what I am going to say." So I stood up, trembling from head to toe. He continued, "Do not be afraid, Daniel, for God has heard your prayer from the first time you humbled yourself before him to seek wisdom. I have come in response to your prayer. The angel protector of the Persian kingdom fought against me for 21 days. But Michael, one of the chief angels, came to help me, for I was struggling alone against the kings of Persia. Now I have come to explain what will happen to your people, for this vision concerns future events." While he was speaking, I remained silent, looking down at the ground. Suddenly, someone with a human appearance touched my lips. Then I began to speak and said to the angel standing before me, "My lord, this vision has left me troubled, and I feel weak. How can I, your servant, speak with you? I am completely without strength and can barely breathe." Then he touched me again, and I felt my strength return. He said,
God love you.
"Therefore, do not be afraid. May God's peace be with you. Be strong. Take courage." Then I felt much stronger and responded, "Speak, for you have given me new strength." He said, "Do you know why I came to speak with you? It was to reveal what is written in the book of truth. But now I must return to fight against the prince of Persia. When the battle is over, the prince of Greece will come. In this battle, no one supports me except Michael, your prince." Daniel, chapter 11. He is the one who helps and protects me. The kingdoms of Egypt and Syria. The angel continued, saying, "What I am about to tell you is the truth. 3 more kings will arise in Persia, and then a 4th, who will be far richer than all of them. With his wealth, he will gain power and stir up everyone against the kingdom of Greece. After him, a mighty king will arise who will rule with great power and do as he pleases. But as soon as he rises to power, his kingdom will be broken up and divided into 4 parts. These parts will not go to his descendants, and none will have the power he had. The king of Egypt will be strong, but one of his commanders will be even stronger and will rule over a larger kingdom. After some years, the king of Egypt and the king of Syria will make an alliance. The king of Egypt will give his daughter in marriage to the king of Syria to secure the alliance, but the plan will fail. She, along with her husband, child, and attendants, will be betrayed and killed. Shortly after, a relative of hers will take the throne and will march with his army against the forces of the king of Syria. He will attack the Syrian fortress and defeat them. He will take the gods and valuable gold and silver objects from Syria and bring them to Egypt. There will be some years of peace between the nations, but then the king of Syria will try to invade Egypt again. However, he will be defeated and return to his own land. The sons of the king of Syria will prepare for war and raise a large army. One of them will march with his troops, flooding the land like a river, and attack the fortresses of the king of Egypt. The king of Egypt will be so enraged that he will set out with his army and fight against the Syrians, who will be defeated by the Egyptians. The king of Egypt will be filled with pride for having struck down so many soldiers, but his power will not last long. Then the king of Syria will raise an even greater army and, after several years, will return with a large, well-equipped force to fight against Egypt. Many will rise against the king of Egypt. Among them, some violent men from Israel will rebel based on a vision they have, but they will fail. The king of Syria will come with his army, build siege ramps around a walled city, and capture it. Even the best soldiers of the Egyptian army will not be able to stop the Syrian forces. The enemy will do as they please with the Egyptian soldiers, and no one will be able to stand against them. He will invade the promised land and conquer it completely. Then the king of Syria will mobilize his entire army to fight against Egypt. To defeat his enemy, he will make an agreement with the king of Egypt and offer his daughter in marriage, but the plan will not succeed. He will attack the coastal cities of the Mediterranean and conquer many of them. But a military commander from another land will put an end to his arrogance and leave him humiliated. The king of Syria will return to his own land, but he will stumble and fall, and no one will remember him. Another king will take his place, sending a tax collector to raise funds for the kingdom. However, this king will soon die, but not in battle. The next king of Syria will be a vile man who will not have a legitimate claim to the throne, but through deceit and intrigue, he will seize power. He will destroy all opposing armies and even kill the high priest. He will deceive those who make alliances with him, and with a small force, he will grow stronger and stronger. He will attack the richest provinces of the land by surprise and do things his ancestors never did. He will distribute plunder, loot, and wealth among his followers. For a time, he will plot to overthrow strongholds. Trusting in his power and courage, he will march with his large army against the king of Egypt. The king of Egypt will go out to battle with a large and powerful army but will be betrayed by his own advisors, who will lead him to ruin. His army will be defeated, and many soldiers will be killed. Then the two kings will sit down at the same table and lie to each other, each trying to harm the other. But their plans will fail, for the end will still come at the appointed time. The king of Syria will return to his own country, taking with him the treasures he has acquired from the war. At the appointed time, he will march again with his forces against Egypt, but this time he will not succeed as he did before. Ships from the western coastlands will come against him, and he will be disheartened. Then he will turn back and vent his fury against the Holy Covenant. He will return and show favor to those who forsake the Holy Covenant. His armed forces will rise up to desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice. Then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. With flattery, he will corrupt those who have violated the covenant, but the people who know their God will firmly resist him. Wise teachers will instruct many, though for a time they will fall by the sword or be burned, captured, or plundered. When they fall, they will receive a little help, and many who are not sincere will join them. Some of the wise will stumble, but this will refine and purify them until the time of the end, for it will still come at the appointed time. The king of Syria will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god and will say unheard of things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is completed, for what has been determined must take place. He will show no regard for the gods of his ancestors or for the one desired by women, nor will he regard any god, but will exalt himself above them all. Instead of them, he will honor a god of fortresses, a god unknown to his ancestors he will honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. He will attack the mightiest fortresses with the help of a foreign god and will greatly honor those who acknowledge him. He will make them rulers over many people and will distribute the land at a price. At the time of the end, the king of Egypt will engage him in battle, but the king of Syria will unleash a massive force against him, including chariots, cavalry, and a fleet of ships. He will invade many lands and sweep through them like a flood. He will also invade the beautiful land. Many countries will fall, but Edom, Moab, and the leaders of Ammon will be delivered from his hand. He will extend his power over many countries. Egypt will not escape. He will gain control of the treasures of gold and silver and all the riches of Egypt, with the Libyans and Cushites in submission. But reports from the east and the north will alarm him, and he will set out in a great rage to destroy and annihilate many. He will pitch his royal tents between the seas at the beautiful holy mountain. Yet he will come to his end, and no one will help him. Daniel, chapter 12. The final moment. The angel continued speaking. At that time, the angel Michael, the protector of God's people, will arise. It will be a time of great distress, such as has never occurred since the beginning of nations. But at that time, everyone whose name is found written in the book of God will be delivered. Many who have died will awaken, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. The wise, who led many to righteousness, will shine like the stars in the sky, with everlasting brilliance. And you, Daniel, keep these words secret. Seal the book until the final time. Many will go here and there, seeking to increase their knowledge. Then I saw two angels standing on opposite sides of the river. One of them asked the angel dressed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, "When will these extraordinary things happen?" The angel raised his hands to heaven and in the name of God, who lives forever, declared, "I swear that all this will happen in 3.5 years, when the persecution of God's people comes to an end." But I did not fully understand, so I asked, "Please, tell me how all this will end." And he replied, "Now, Daniel, you may go, for all this must remain a secret until the end. Many will be tested, purified, and refined. The wicked will continue in their wickedness without understanding what is happening, but the wise will understand. After the suspension of daily sacrifices and the setting up of the abomination of desolation in the temple, 1,290 days will pass. Blessed are those who remain faithful to God for 1,335 days. And you, Daniel, remain steadfast until the end. You will rest, but at the end of days, you will rise to receive your reward. Now, let's explore some powerful lessons we can draw from the life and history of Daniel. First, integrity in the face of adversity. Daniel maintained his faith and principles even in a hostile culture. From refusing the king's food to his persistence in prayer, Daniel teaches us to stay true to our convictions, regardless of the circumstances. How can we maintain our integrity in a world that often opposes Christian values? Next, divine wisdom surpasses human wisdom. Time and again, we see Daniel receiving wisdom from God to interpret dreams and solve puzzles that baffled Babylon's wise men. How can we seek God's wisdom in our daily decisions? Courage in the face of danger is another important lesson. Daniel faced the lion's den for his faith. His friends faced the fiery furnace. These stories inspire us to be courageous in the face of persecution or adversity. Where in our lives do we need to demonstrate courage for our faith? The power of consistent prayer is also highlighted. Daniel's prayer life was so constant that his enemies used it against him. Yet, it was this very devotion that sustained him through his toughest moments. How can we develop a more consistent and meaningful prayer life? God is in control of history. Daniel's visions of future kingdoms remind us that, while earthly empires may seem powerful, God remains sovereign over all. How can this truth comfort us in times of political or social uncertainty? Excellence in secular work is another valuable lesson. Daniel served with distinction under various kings, showing that we can glorify God through our work, even in secular environments. How can we demonstrate excellence in our work as a testimony of our faith? The importance of study and preparation is also evident. Daniel and his friends excelled in their training, showing the importance of developing our minds and skills. How can we commit to intellectual and spiritual growth? Humility in the face of success is another characteristic of Daniel. Despite his high position, Daniel always credited God for his wisdom and success. How can we cultivate humility in our own lives? Finally, hope for the future. Daniel's prophecies offer hope, showing that God has a plan for the future, culminating in the establishment of his eternal kingdom. How can this hope shape our perspective on current and future events? Remember, friends, Daniel's story is not just an ancient account. It is a practical guide for living a life of authentic and impactful faith today. May we, like Daniel, remain faithful, courageous, and full of hope, knowing that we serve a sovereign and faithful God. Which of these lessons resonated with you the most? Leave a comment, and let's discuss how we can apply these truths to our lives.